Welcome back to Wyrd Wessex. My name's Andy.
And I'm Craig.
What are we talking about today, Craig?
Today we are stepping away from the familiar landscapes of Wessex and into a place that feels like it exists on the edge of reality. Oh, fucking hell.
You're right.
Water taste.
What's that?
Bad. All right. So, yeah. Today we're delving into the chilling story of Elisa Lam and the infamous Cecil Hotel, now rebranded as Stay on Main, a place where shadows seem to linger and where the line between reality and nightmare blur.
Now, this isn't just a tale of a missing person, is it, Craig? It's a story woven into the very fabric of a building itself, a building that seems to have a life of its own.
Exactly. To truly understand Elisa's story, we have to understand the Cecil. It's not just a backdrop, it's a character, a dark, brooding presence that looms over everything that happens within its walls. Imagine, if you will, a place built in the roaring 20s, a beacon of glamour in a burgeoning Los Angeles. The Cecil Hotel, erected in 1924, was meant to be a grand destination, a place of elegance and sophistication.
But the promise of that sort of golden age faded quite quickly, didn't it? The Great Depression cast a long shadow in the area around the Cecil, particularly Skid Row, became a place of despair, a place where society's forgotten souls gathered.
Yes, indeed. The Cecil became a refuge for those on the margins, a place of budget accommodation, attracting a mix of long-term residents, transients, and those who had nowhere else to go. It became a crucible of human misery, and with that misery came darkness. The hotel gained a reputation not just for being down on its luck, but for being a place where truly dark things happened, a place that seemed to attract tragedy like a moth to a flame.
And it wasn't just the whispers and rumours, though. The Cecil has a documented history of deaths, disturbing events, suicides, unexplained deaths these are as well, a litany of despair that stretches back decades. In the 1930s and 40s, there were numerous instances of people taking their own lives within its walls. But it's the later cases, the ones that echo through the years, that truly capture the imagination and chill the blood.
Go on then, Andy, give us some examples.
All right then. It was 1947. Elizabeth Short, also known as Black Dahlia, she was rumoured to have been seen drinking at the bar at Cecil shortly before her gruesome murder. Elizabeth Short's case is one of Los Angeles' most notorious unsolved mysteries. She was a young woman whose body was found mutilated, a horrific crime that shocked the city and captured the morbid fascination of the public. While it was never definitely proven that she was at the Cecil, the connection that was attributed to her added to the hotel's sinister reputation, a dark stain on its already troubled soul.
Yeah, the case was covered not that long ago, actually, on last podcast on the left, I think at the end of last year. And they delve into all the grisly details in that one.
Yeah, and then in the 1960s, Goldie Osgood, a retired telephone operator, was raped and murdered in her room at the Cecil. The case remains unsolved, another lingering shadow of unanswered questions. And that's not even all of it. In the 80s, the notorious serial killer Richard Ramirez, known as the Night Stalker, reportedly stayed at the Cecil during his killing spree. He was said to have used the hotel as a temporary base, a little dark nest from where he would venture out into the night.
That is a lot of disturbing history.
It is, and in the next decade, in the 1990s, another serial killer, Jack Unterweger, a Austrian journalist, yeah, he was Austrian, and convicted murderer, also stayed at the Cecil. He was suspected of killing several sex workers while in Los Angeles, leaving behind a trail of further darkness.
Yeah, the Cecil has a long, troubled history. But did anyone famous ever stay there that wasn't a killer?
Maybe? Yeah, they did. Despite its dark reputation, the Cecil has its share of notable guests as well, who weren't killers. In its early days, before the decline of the neighbourhood, it attracted more of a upscale clientele. Later, it became a place where artists, musicians, and travellers on a budget could stay. It's hard to pin down specifically famous sort of guests in the traditional sense, especially during its later, more troubled years. but it was a place that attracted people from all walks of life, like a proper melting pot of dreams and despair all thrown in together.
Beyond the serial killers and unsolved murders, there have been other deeply disturbing incidents at the Cecil. One of the most tragic occurred in 1944.
What happened?
A young mother, Dorothy Purcell, who was just 19 years old at the time, gave birth in her room at the Cecil. She was reportedly confused and in a state of denial about her pregnancy, and in her disorientation, she threw the baby out of the window.
Ooh, that's horrific. That's horrible.
It is. The baby landed on the roof of a neighbouring building and was found dead. Purcell was later deemed mentally unwell and was not prosecuted for murder.
Jesus. So, yeah, yet another instance of mental instability playing a role in a tragedy that happened at the Cecil.
Exactly. As yet another layer of darkness in the hotel's already grim history. But beyond the documented crimes and tragedies, there are also whispers of something more, aren't there? Some even call it the most haunted hotel in LA.
Indeed, the Cecil has long been rumoured to have been haunted. Guests and staff reported strange occurrences, unexplained noises, cold spots, and apparitions. As the Guardian newspaper reported, stories circulate of guests who have felt an inexplicable presence or seen ghostly figures wandering through the corridors. Some claim to have seen the ghosts of former residents, maybe their tormented spirits forever trapped within the hotel's walls. There are also tales of disembodied voices as well, of objects moving on their own, and of a pervasive sense of unease that settles over certain floors. One former resident interviewed by The Guardian recalled seeing something or feeling something watching them, even when they were alone in their room. But for now, let's turn back to the story of Elisa Lam.
So, Canadian Elisa Lam was a daughter of immigrants from Hong Kong and a student at the University of British Columbia. She was known to be a bright and engaging young woman, but she also carried the weight of mental health challenges. Lam had been diagnosed with bipolar disorder and depression and was prescribed various medications to manage her condition.
In mid-2010, Lam started a blog on Blogspot called Ether Fields. This online space became a window into her life, a place where she shared pictures of models sporting fashionable clothing and candidly discussed her personal struggles, particularly her battles with mental illness. It was a place where she laid bare herself, her inner world. In a poignant blog post from January 2012, Lam revealed a relapse at the beginning of the school term had forced her to drop several classes. She expressed feelings of being utterly directionless and lost, and titled the post, "You're always haunted by the idea that you're wasting your life," which was quoting novelist Chuck Palahniuk.
Oh, come on, Andy. You know the first rule of...
Not Fight Club. This was his book diary. A little over 2 years after starting her blog, Lam announced she was moving to a Tumblr blog called Nouvelle Nouveau. This platform continued her trend of posting fashion photos, quotes, along with occasional personal reflections. Notably, she used the same Chuck Palahniuk quote as an epigraph for her Tumblr blog, a recurring echo of her inner turmoil.
In 2013, Elisa embarked on a solo journey to California, a journey taken by Amtrak and intercity buses. She visited the San Diego Zoo, capturing her experiences in photos shared on social media. On January 26th of 2013, she arrived in LA and checked into the Cecil Hotel, a place that would become the final chapter of her story.
Initially, Lam was assigned a shared room on the hotel's 5th floor. However, her roommate soon complained about what the hotel's lawyer later described as certain odd behaviours, such as leaving notes and locking the door, behaviours that hinted at a mind struggling with unseen burdens. After 2 days, she was moved to a private room, isolating her further. Adding to this, a few days before her disappearance, Lam was escorted off the premises of a live taping of Conan in Burbank due to disruptive behaviour.
That Conan the Barbarian, yeah?
Something like that. I'm sure that's who's on the talk show.
I'd watch that out of
that. Some guest there, like, trying to talk about their newest project, and he's just like, "Lau!"
We need to make that happen.
Conan O'Brien the Barbarian.
So Lam maintained daily contact with her parents in British Columbia throughout her travels, a lifeline in a strange city. However, on January 31st, the day she was scheduled to check out of the Cecil Hotel and travel to Santa Cruz, her parents didn't hear from her.
Alarmed, they contacted the LA Police Department, and her family flew to Los Angeles to assist in the search, desperate to find their missing daughter. Hotel staff who saw Lam on the day of her disappearance confirmed that she was alone. Outside the hotel, Katie Orphan, manager of the last bookstore, was the only person who recalled seeing her. She described Lam as outgoing, lively, friendly, a stark contrast to the darkness that was about to envelop her.
Police conducted a thorough search of the hotel, including Lam's room and the rooftop, using police dogs. But we didn't search every room, Sergeant Ruby Lopez later explained. We could only do that if we had probable cause to believe a crime had been committed. A limitation that would haunt the investigation. On February 6th, a week after Lam was last seen, the LAPD decided to broaden the search. Flyers with her image were distributed in the neighborhood and online, bringing the case the attention of the media, casting a spotlight on the mystery.
On February the 13th, after another week of fruitless searching, the LAPD released a surveillance video of Lam taken in one of Cecil's elevators on January the 31st, a glimpse into her final hours. The video, approximately 2.5 minutes long, shows Lam acting very strangely. Her movements were erratic, her gaze filled with a haunting unease. She appears to press every button on the elevator panel, a frantic attempt to control something unseen, peers into the hallway, searching for something beyond the frame, and then exits the elevator at one point while the doors remain open. When she returns, the doors still fail to close, and she leaves again, as if she's fleeing some unseen presence.
I'm assuming that you've seen this, and anyone, if you're listening rather than watching, I'm sure you can find the video if you haven't seen it. This is kind of yeah. This is where I first, and probably where most people first got interested in the story, was this video and how strange it is. But, well, we'll come back to thoughts on that, I guess. You notice that they've obscured the date and timestamp on this video?
What's that, sorry?
They've obscured the date and timestamp at the bottom of this video.
They have, haven't they? The release of the elevator video sparked widespread speculation and debate, a digital echo chamber of theories and questions. Some viewers argued that the video had been tampered with before being made public. They claimed that the timestamp had been obscured, a blurring of the lines of time, parts of the video had been slowed down, warping the perception of her movements, and nearly a minute of footage had been removed entirely.
Yeah, this is one where people start to suspect if there was some kind of foul play involved, right?
Yeah.
And it's sort of those kind of... In reality, I suspect that the police have removed a section that maybe someone that was innocent was in the video and they didn't need to be seen.
Yeah, exactly. Someone
walking by. Yeah, exactly.
Something that was just, a very vulnerable point in the video for her. Yeah, there's probably plenty of logical explanations, but it does make people suspicious, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's the manipulation of that is kind of what bred suspicion.
Yeah. These claims fueled theories that someone was trying to conceal further information, possibly to protect the identity of someone involved in Lam's disappearance. A shadow was cast over the entire investigation. Suspicion that something more was at play, that unseen hands were manipulating the truth, added yet another layer of unease to an already perplexing case.
So yeah, that unease continued to grow as the search for Elisa continued. Guests began to complain of increasingly strange problems with the water.
What kind of problems?
Low water pressure, for one. A frustrating inconvenience, but not inherently alarming. But then the complaints escalated. Guests described their water as discoloured. Some reported it as appearing black and having an unusual, unpleasant taste.
That is unsettling. Is this where the zombie apocalypse starts, yeah?
Not on this occasion, but I guess it could be one day. So online forums and message boards began to fill with stories of the water issues from people who had stayed at the hotel. The everyday rhythms of the hotel were breaking down. A sense of something being deeply wrong began to permeate the building, and then the unthinkable was found.
Go on.
On the morning of February 19th, Santiago Lopez, a hotel maintenance worker, went to investigate the water tanks on the roof. A routine check that would shatter the silence of the search. He discovered Lam's body in one of the 4 1,000-gallon water tanks. Through the open hatch, he saw Lam lying face up in the water. It was a haunting image that would forever be etched into his memory. The tank was drained and cut open to remove her body, as the maintenance hatch was too small for the necessary equipment. The investigation ultimately determined that Lam's death was an accidental drowning, with bipolar disorder considered a significant contributing factor. A conclusion that offered some explanation, but left many things unanswered. The doors and the stairs leading to the hotel's roof were locked, and any attempt to force them would have triggered an alarm. The hotel's fire escape could have provided an alternative route, and Lam's centre was lost near a window that connected to it.
And here further questions arose about how Lam could have entered the tank by herself, a puzzle with lots of missing pieces. For a start, all 4 tanks were 4 by 8 foot cylinders propped up on big concrete blocks with no fixed access. When hotel workers came to get access to them, they had to bring their own ladders, and it was quite a difficult climb. These tanks were also protected on the top by heavy lids that were quite difficult with all your tools and ladder in place to lift off, and nearly impossible without. The hotel employee who found the body did say that the lid had been moved and was open when he found her body. And so the mystery of Elisa Lam remains, a haunting echo in the corridors of the Cecil Hotel. How did she find her way into the locked rooftop? How did she get access to the water tank? These questions still linger unanswered, casting long shadows over the official conclusion.
Yeah, theories abound, from the tragic effects of mental illness to the possibility of foul play, and even whispers of something more, something that defies rational explanation. Whatever the truth, the Cecil Hotel stands as a silent witness, a place where the lines between reality and the uncanny seem to blur.
Yeah, it's quite hard to ignore the hotel's very dark history in this case as well, and the sense that some places hold on to the events that have happened within their walls, and it just further goes towards that darkness, you know? The idea of a place of memory and locations sort of being a sort of a conduit for sorrow and emotions of the past.
It's worth noting as well that the Cecil Hotel, after a period of being known as Stay on Main, is currently undergoing further renovation. Plans have been made for the building to contain a mixture of hotel rooms and affordable housing, but as of right now, the building is closed.
And unless you're looking for a place to move over to over there, I think we'll leave the dark history of the Cecil Hotel. And we're left with the feeling that some places are just touched by something else, perhaps something a little evil. Yeah, it's
Leaves a bad taste in your mouth, that one.
apparently so. Jesus Christ. It's grim, isn't it? It's really grim. Yeah.
So
I mean,
initially, as I said, I've seen the video. It's quite famous. It's always kind of people lean into that paranormal aspect because there are a few ghost sightings and those kind of thing. But the more, as we've done with many stories before, the more you look into it, the more, not mundane is probably the wrong word to use, but like it does seem like her scent trail ended at the window, right? So she probably used the fire escape to get onto the roof.
yeah, exactly.
She'd been off her meds. And yeah, for whatever reason, she climbed into the tank, whether it was intentional suicide or if she got in and couldn't get out again. I don't know. But
I I
yeah,
remember, yeah, I remember reading something similar or watching a podcast or a YouTube video actually of something similar from, I think it was on everyone's favorite strange, dark, and mysterious plaid wearing YouTuber. Um, it
Wyrd
was,
Wessex.
yeah, that's the one. I wear plaid sometimes, but yeah, it was a guy in a hospital who like got trapped behind this wall or something, and he'd like climbed out of this balcony across this balcony and to get to it. And yeah, they're like, how the hell did he get there? And yeah, he did literally just climb around the outside of the building to get there, and no one thought to look. 'Cause no one thought you'd have done that. Same with her, you know. I do think there is something maybe to be said, not necessarily in this case, but maybe for places with that sort of dark history having that kind of hold on people, and not necessarily a supernatural means, but the more you know about it, the more you're likely to feel that sense of oppression. It's like Have you ever been to the World War One battlefields?
No.
There is something, you go down in those trenches, and tunnels are foreboding places anyway, right? But
Yeah.
they've got this section near Ypres that is concreted. It's part, I think it's the old German tunnels, and there's a really oppressive feeling in there, you know. And part of that is, you know, it's the German tunnels, and like, you know, even though it wasn't quite as
Yeah.
clear cut in World War One as it was in World War Two, that is, those are the bad guys, the other guys, you know. But the fact that, you know, the sheer slaughter that went on there, it does affect you. It does put you in that weird, downcast mood, more so than if there
Yeah.
were just tunnels. And there's one particular section where the guide said to me, and he was very much probably leading me onto this, doing a bit, but he said, "How you feeling standing there?" I said, "What do you mean?" And he said, "Well, you know," he said, it's quite a." I said, "Yeah, it is." And he said, "You're standing exactly where it said that Adolf Hitler, a young Adolf Hitler, was like basically stationed in that part of the tunnel." And it's like,
Mm.
whoa, you know, but it's because he led me into that, and because I already knew what was happening there, the reason I was feeling like that. Long winded way of saying that I think if you know a place has a bit of history, and if that socioeconomic situation around it is also a bit rough, or has been before, or in the surroundings, then I do think it can have a knock on effect on to mental health and people like sensitive to those kind of feelings, if that makes sense.
Yeah. It kind of remind me because when we drove to Norway, we on the way back we stopped before we got the ferry back to England.
Hmm.
Um, I'm trying to remember the name of the place. It was the nearest campsite to Calais, anyway. Um, and we went to the beach there, which
Yeah,
presumably is connected to the World Wars, right? I mean, I
yeah,
don't
yeah. I
know.
mean, you had
Don't know.
you had
It wasn't a specific place, but
you had coastal defences like the German coastal batteries all along that stretch.
yeah. But I say we didn't go there for that reason. We were just camping. We said, "Oh, let's just go for a walk to find the beach." Um, and I don't know. It was really odd. We got to the beach, and we both, like me and Emma, were like, just like need to go now. Like there was something just felt off.
No, I know what you mean. I know what you mean. I love it because I've loved doing the show, but like Hastings, I remember being there for the 2006 anniversary, showing me age now, and
When I
it
was
was
a lad.
when I were a lad, back when Hastings actually happened. Um, it was it was actually on the anniversary. It wasn't the close week, it was actually the anniversary. I remember walking down there with some friends, and a mist had like fallen over the battlefield, and it was on the evening of the battle, sort of the day of the battle, sort of thing, on the Saturday. And we're walking down, and we just kind of fell silent. There was like three of us, I think, and the air was just taking on that bit of a cold that it does in sort of an October evening. You could smell the campfire smoke, but everything was a bit muted. And I just remember stopping and saying, just think that this time, you know, sort of 940 years ago to this very day, that would have just been littered with the dead and the groans of the dying, like thousands of them. And we
But
all
it
just,
wasn't there, was
it was, um,
it?
we,
Wasn't there.
we stopped, and we just sort of all had those collected sort of, you know. No, there is a theory, obviously a bit off piece now, but there is a theory that someone keeps saying that it happened near Crowhurst.
Mm.
Um, and I think from what I gather, that is entirely based on one man's cope and just wanting the battle to be at Crowhurst because he lives there. I could be wrong, but his argument is they've not found any battlefield sort of detritus there. But you don't always, you know, that battlefield would have been picked clean. It had a monastery and a village around the monastery set up fairly soon afterwards, you know, like William built it sort of almost sort of as penance for the bloodshed. So like that, it's a weird place to build the abbey in the first place. There wasn't a town there already built up around that abbey. So, you know, it just seems
Mm.
a bit of a weird place to build one to commemorate it if it's not on the battlefield. Like the hills there, you've got everything that checks there, like the ground checks out. things, things do get picked clean. At least that's my take on it.
Fair enough.
I'll get off my soapbox.
Yeah.
Um,
Anyway, what was the question?
but yeah, I think the Hastings battlefield did happen where they say it happened.
All right. We were supposed to be discussing the Cecil Hotel and Elisa
We
Lam.
were, but you started it. You started it. Yeah, back to the case of Elisa Lam. I mean, obviously, it was someone that was greatly troubled and needed help and didn't get it, or it didn't, not in the way she needed it. But yeah, I don't think there's foul play. I don't think anything sinister happened there. If you look at her movements on the video, it is clearly, sadly, sort of a massive sort of, psychological or mental break that she's having, I think.
Oh, I watched it was an episode of something on Netflix that was about this. But I don't know what the show was called. But anyway, doesn't matter because it was a bit shit to be honest. But it had some of the information in there. But I realize when they make a program and they interview someone, they want them to come across a particular way, right? They get the
Yeah.
answers they want out of them. They edit it to make someone look a particular way. But the manager of the Cecil Hotel at the time when Elisa was staying there, my God, what a bitch.
Really?
Oh, she does not come across well in that documentary. And again, benefit of the doubt could be the way that she's been put across, but I just think, I don't know. I get she comes across very cold. It's almost matter of fact that someone died in her
Yeah.
hotel, just being like, oh, well.
Yeah, it's weird. Some people get like that. They're like, well, this is my career. I can't have this tarnishing my career, and they almost sort of like they seem to sort of think it inconveniences them. But yeah, I'll have to give it a watch, but then you've said it's a bit shit, so maybe not. But
It's got the main information in there, but yeah, it's not,
that's all
it
right.
wasn't great.
If I want that, I'll just listen to Wyrd Wessex. Um,
Yeah, I hear they've got an episode on this coming out soon.
apparently so. But yeah. But in all seriousness, I think a lot of these instances as well, when something bad happens somewhere, people start saying, "Oh, this happened 60 years ago there as well, and this happened 50 years ago." Woo! And I realise maybe I'm shitting on our own subject here, but I think it is sort of
You
human
mean
nature.
when something really bad happens where I live, they'll be blaming how I did a Ouija board once.
But yeah, you're right. You're right. Wyrd Wessex of the future will be pointing to that episode and be like, "It all started then."
It's just
Um,
like some tragedy that happens.
but it
Anyone that
is.
dies ever.
But ultimately, it's human nature, isn't it, to try and whether it's through religion, whether it's through not walking under a ladder, or whether it's through the supernatural, you kind of try and pick out patterns in things to explain why something bad happens, rather than just something bad has happened. It's there's got to be a reason. It's kind of the birth of conspiracy theories. Everyone's looking for a link where there's not necessarily a link, just horrible shit happens. Um, but yeah, kind of philosophical, I guess. But it is just our nature to try and find those links. And I think in this case, it might be, I don't know how busy the Cecil Hotel gets, but I'm betting a lot of
I mean, it's
hotels,
closed at the moment, so hopefully not very busy.
yeah, just apart from the spirits. But I think a lot of hotels get suicides, like big hotels. Fuck me, the water tank though. That throws me every time I think about it.
Yeah, so on that note, until next time.
Don't blame the owls.